Let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein. Here's the thing that's so hard to wrap your head around. For years, this man was a convicted sex offender. It was a known fact. And yet somehow, he stayed right at the center of this incredible global network of power and influence. So the big question is, how? How did he pull that off? That's what we're going to unpack today.
It all really starts with this, a truly chilling statement that one of his victims, Virginia Giuffre, remembered being told. And you have to understand, this isn't just some empty threat. This is basically their mission statement. It tells you everything you need to know about the absolute impunity that Epstein and his partner Ghislaine Maxwell believed they operated with. And for decades, well, they were mostly right. So let's take a closer look at that network. You would think that a 2008 conviction for soliciting a minor for prostitution would make you a total outcast, right? But for Jeffrey Epstein, it was, unbelievably, barely a speed bump. His access to some of the most powerful people in the world, it just continued, completely unbroken.
And look, we're not just dealing with rumors here. We know this because of thousands of pages of documents, emails, calendars, you name it, that were just released by the House Oversight Committee. And these docs cover the entire decade after his conviction, from 2009 all the way to his final arrest. They paint this incredibly vivid picture of a guy who's just operating with total confidence at the very top of society.
What's so wild about this stuff is just how casual it is. You've got Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's former top strategist, sending Epstein a news clip about his own dangerous reputation. And Epstein's reply, "Love it." He didn't even spell love right. It just shows you a man who is absolutely reveling in his own notoriety, completely unbothered by the fact that he's a registered sex offender.
But here's the thing. This was not a one-party show. Not at all. You flip to the other side of the political aisle, and here's Catherine Rumler, who was President Obama's White House counsel, emailing with Epstein, gossiping about Donald Trump. And Epstein's reply, again with the typos, shows him just as comfortable, just as embedded with the Democratic establishment. He was playing all sides all the time.
And this slide right here really shows you his whole playbook. On one side, he's offering to set up one-on-one meetings with world leaders for Steve Bannon. On the other, he's bragging to Catherine Rumler about his packed schedule of meetings with ambassadors and tech CEOs, telling her she's welcome anytime. See, the key thing to understand is that Epstein wasn't just attending the party. He was positioning himself as the guy at the door, the connector who could grant you access. That was his currency.
And his web? It stretched way beyond Washington, D.C. It included Silicon Valley titans like Peter Thiel, huge international business figures like Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, and this one's pretty shocking, a whole roster of top academics, from Noam Chomsky to the former president of Harvard, Larry Summers. The emails make it clear. He wasn't just a name in their phone book. He was an active broker of influence, and he kept these relationships going for years after he was a convicted felon.
So all of this just leads to the one massive question. How on earth was any of this possible? How does a known predator operate this openly for this long? Well, the answer isn't simple. It's a story of decades of documented systemic failures by the very institutions that are supposed to protect us.
Just look at this timeline. It's absolutely staggering. In 1996, a victim named Maria Farmer goes to the FBI. What happens? Nothing. A whole decade, 10 years goes by. It takes local police work before the FBI finally opens a case in 2006. But then, get this, just a year later, the federal investigation gets shut down, which sets the stage for that now infamous deal of a lifetime.
And the way that deal was made, it's like a textbook on how to get away with it. First, it was all negotiated in total secrecy. Then, the prosecutors actually lied to the victims. They sent them letters saying the case was still ongoing, months after the deal had already been signed. And maybe most importantly, they intentionally hid the entire federal agreement from the state judge. So the system didn't just fail here, it was actively used to hide the truth. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This isn't just what the victims were saying. A federal appeals court itself later looked at this deal and used these absolutely scathing words to describe it. They said it was calculated to make victim lawsuits go away. That is a stunning rebuke from one part of the government to another. So for more than a decade after this secret deal went down, even as civil lawsuits kept piling up, laying out this massive criminal conspiracy in horrifying detail, the Department of Justice and the FBI, they did nothing. They failed to launch another investigation for over 10 years. 10 years of inaction, while the abuse just kept going.
Okay, so that brings us to the present day, because with the release of all these new documents, this incredibly complex tragedy has just exploded into a political firestorm. And in a firestorm like this, well, the facts are usually the first thing to get burned.
And this is where it gets really important to separate what's being claimed from what the evidence actually shows. Let's just look at what nonpartisan fact-checkers found. You've got a Democratic claim about Trump that they say overstates the evidence. You've got a Republican claim about a Democrat that's called subjective. Then you have other claims that are just flat-out misleading or are missing critical context. The pattern is pretty clear, right? Both sides are using Epstein's name as a political weapon.
I mean, this exchange right here just shows you how chaotic it's all become. You have one member of Congress accusing another of taking money from a Jeffrey Epstein, and the other guy fires back, "Yeah, I did," from a doctor who happens to have the same name. It just goes to show you, in the rush to score political points, even the most basic fact-checking gets thrown right out the window.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a minute and try to put all these pieces together. What are the bigger lessons here? What does this whole ugly saga really teach us about power, about justice, and about truth in our society?
After all of this, the crimes, the cover-ups, the political mudslinging, what is it that these files really, truly reveal about the world we live in?
I think you can really boil it down to 4 main takeaways. First, extreme wealth doesn't just buy you nice things, it can buy you a network so powerful it basically insulates you from any real accountability. Second, our justice system isn't perfect. It has these clear vulnerabilities, like secret deals made by prosecutors that the powerful can and do exploit. Third, in today's hyper-partisan world, a complicated, painful story like this gets flattened out and turned into a simple weapon to hit the other side with. And finally, some critics argue that the mainstream media just hasn't wanted to touch the biggest questions here, like Epstein's possible ties to intelligence agencies and foreign governments. The theory is that story is just too messy and involves too many powerful people. And all of that leaves us with one final and pretty unsettling question. You know, the symbol for our legal system is Lady Justice, blindfolded, holding the scales to show that everyone is treated equally. But when you look at the decades of influence, the decades of failure, the decades of impunity in the Jeffrey Epstein case, you just have to ask yourself, when power is that entrenched, can justice ever really be blind?